Why I don't play with Ouija boards anymore. There will be two stories here. The first one's super creepy, and the second, more sad, more of an explanation as to why I no longer participate. I want to preface this all by saying I grew up seeing ghosts, so the whole topic of spirits wasn't new to me. However, I was so scared by them that around the time I was around 7 or 8, when the energetic system starts to be solely individualized, I trained my brain to not see them anymore. I never talked about it with friends as my family never believed me, so I assumed they wouldn't either. The first story takes us back to the 00s. I was a little girl celebrating my friend's birthday. She always had a Halloween party to celebrate because that's when her birthday happened to be. She always talked about how her basement felt weird and she didn't like staying down there alone. Well, having 10 or so 10-year-old girls sleep over on Halloween night isn't exactly bedroom material, so her mum and grandma set us up in the basement. There we played those weird games like light as a feather, stiff as a board and stuff. Fun fact, I was the only one we successfully levitated. I remember opening my eyes and I was damn near at the ceiling. It was spooky. When some of us started to get tired, we brought out the Ouija board. A few of our friends were spooked, so they didn't want to participate. We asked innocent questions like kids usually do. Who is the birthday girl going to marry? How old are we going to be when we have kids? Stuff like that. I remember I asked a question about myself and it replied, dead, which was weird. Some of the girls got spooked even more by that. Then a girl screamed and said she saw something behind me in the mirror. We stopped after that. For a few hours, 3 of us, including me and the birthday girl, couldn't sleep. We weren't sure if the board was real or not, so we decided we'd try one more time while everyone else was asleep, thinking that since they didn't want to play, it'd be better that way. We were close to 3 a.m. What we heard is the witching hour. Remember here that we are about 10 or 11 years old, dumb, and have no idea what we're doing or who we're talking to. We asked the board if it could do something for us. We said at 3:15 a.m. to have the girl who saw something in the mirror wake up and say something to us. It was over 15 years ago, so I don't remember what we asked for this girl to say. All I know is we asked for her to investigate the mirror and say it. 3:15 a.m. was about 20 or so minutes from when we asked the question. I remember us saying goodbye to the board and putting it away. The 3 of us were talking about how impossible our ask was when 3:15 a.m. hit. We knew it hit 3:15 a.m. because her basement had a big grandfather clock that didn't ring anymore, but the clock function still worked. We were waiting, and right before the time changed to 3:16 a.m. it happened. This girl shot straight up out of her blankets and looked straight at the mirror with her eyes closed. She whispered what we asked her to say, then dropped to her pillow like nothing ever happened. We all just looked at each other, frozen. No other girl that was sleeping stirred. None of them moved, not 1 centimeter. We were so freaked out that we didn't sleep until the sun came up, and in October in the Midwest, that's late. We got 3 hours of sleep tops that night. This was my first ever Ouija board experience, and that changed the way I viewed spirits forever. I still think about it and feel guilty that I basically asked for one of my friends to be possessed. Don't ever do that. Our second story comes in nearly a decade after the first. I was a senior in high school and one of my cheermates invited the whole team over to celebrate her birthday. I didn't know it, but she had a Ouija board. She brought it out and I said, nope, not a good idea. I guess her grandma had just died and she was really torn up about it. I was very adamant that this wasn't a good idea and that we don't know if what we're talking to would be her grandma or not. She promised me she'd just try it twice and then she'd put it away. By this time, I knew a lot more than I did back during my first experience. I told her that she must say goodbye each time the girls rotated, and I had them put salt around the board to keep whatever they were talking to inside the board, and so no one would or could get possessed. They tried it at least 4 times with different girls every time, and the plancher didn't move even once. They all laughed at me for how scared I acted earlier, saying that the board is stupid and doesn't actually work. I got kind of annoyed because some of them knew about my experience. I'd shared it to the few who were already hesitant about the board when it was brought out. I said, know what, I'll do it, and I'll prove to everyone here that these boards are real. It was me, the birthday girl, who was a class below me, and 2 other girls from my class who only joined the team for our senior year. We put our fingers on the plancher and did the 3 circles to begin. I asked who we were talking to, and the plancher moved for the first time that night. The two girls in my class were HUGE skeptics. They said, of course it would move when I just said I'll prove it's real. They accused me of moving it, but the information that came out was information I never knew until they connected the dots for me. The board first goes to letter J, then to letter R. We were all confused because JR isn't a name or a name of anyone we knew, or so we thought. We then asked why they were here and the board spelled friend. We asked again, who is this, and the board spelled JR. We then asked what does J stand for, and the board spelled out JONAT. And one of the girls from my class screamed, "No way." We all looked at her in confusion. She asked, "Is this Jonathan Ramone?" The plancher immediately moved to yes. The two girls sat so quietly, and we just waited. The birthday girl asked who JR was, and the girl started to explain. JR was a guy who was in the class above me. I knew of him, but nothing about him personally. I'd been cheering at our school all 4 years, so I knew him from the football team. That was about all I knew of him. He had passed our sophomore year, his junior year, due to his car's exhaust. He didn't want to wake his parents after driving home from a party in the middle of winter, so he slept in his car with the car on in the garage. His parents found him the next morning. I remember it totally ripped apart his class. I remember his friends not showing up to school for at least 2 weeks out of grief. And we had a big celebration on the football field in the spring. Back to the Ouija board situation, the two girls in my class were panicked. They looked at me weird and I said, well, it must be him coming through. They said no, that it's impossible because the board doesn't work, and I'm making all this up and moving the plancher. They said I was a horrible person for impersonating JR, and I said I wasn't because I truly wasn't. I said, let's keep going and see what comes up. I knew they were friends of his and could validate the information that comes through. They reluctantly agreed and feverishly asked a few more questions. They asked what his football number was. The plancher moved to 2 numbers, and the two girls were in shock. I looked at them questioningly, because again, I didn't know this about him. It had been 2 years since he passed, and I had no idea what his number was. I couldn't even remember which number the assigned player I had a few months before had. Then, they asked what color car he had. The board answered red, which was true. I at least remember the picture they had for his celebration was him and his red car, because he loved the car. They then asked who his best friend was, and I definitely had absolutely zero idea who that would be. Again, we had similar friends. We were at the same places at the same time occasionally. But I never once spoke to this guy, and our mutuals didn't really talk to me about him, because we really didn't have anything in common other than friends and the football cheerleader type of association. The board spelled out his best friend's name. The guy was the only guy in our school W that first name, but we asked for the last name just to see if it would spell it correctly. And it did. The girls didn't even say goodbye. They flung the board at me. They called me a liar, saying I made all of this up. They were sobbing and screaming at me. It made me so uncomfortable. I was nothing but the tuner, the instrument which opened the veil for them, and they thought I was an awful person. The whole team fell silent, and I just left due to the discomfort. Even though I had been captain of our team and had cheered with the majority of those girls for at least 3 years, most didn't talk to me, even at practice, for at least 2 weeks. So many of them thought I was either crazy or disgusting. Only a few of them understood that I wouldn't have known that based on who I was friends with at school and who I hung out with. JR and I never truly crossed paths for conversation until that night, if it was actually him, that is. I think it was, but I do know that spirits can pretend to be someone and read our thoughts, memories with them. I don't use a Ouija board anymore, because you never know who you're going to get or who you're going to piss off, even if it works. Now, I am a practicing energy reader and medium, so all this type of stuff in my life has taught me about how to further connect in a safe way, behind the veil.